They say travel makes you wiser, but apparently not if you're us. I'm Jordan Park, self appointed American fixer, driving cross country with my British friend who thinks our optimism is a medical condition, and my cousin Daisy, who believes Lake Michigan has sharks. Together, we're discovering that you can't fix a country you don't understand, and maybe understanding it means laughing at yourself first. Welcome to Fixing America. Badly the road trip where confidence goes faster than facts. I'm Jordan Park, equal parts road trip guy and overconfident explainer setting out to understand America by correcting it. My British pal Alfie Bramwell is visiting for the summer wearing a raincoat because he doesn't trust our weather or our optimism. My cousin Daisy from Arizona insists on tagging along armed with a neck pillow, a gallon Stanley cup, and theories. Our first stop, Chicago, where Daisy announces we'll finally see the ocean from Navy Pier. I gently explain Lake Michigan is in fact not the Atlantic in witness protection. She squints at the horizon like it's lying. It's huge. If it's not the ocean, why are there waves? Alfie sips a black coffee. Wind, he says. Daisy nods slowly, then whispers, so it's Diet Ocean. I change the subject to deep dish pizza, which Daisy confirms is Italian like spaghetti and meatballs in Rome. Alfie smiles politely the way you do before an argument about geography, cuisine, and confidence. I promise to keep things educational. That promise lasts exactly until Daisy books a surf lesson on the lakeshore. The instructor sells her a poncho instead. Driving north, Daisy unveils a bucket list item. We're detouring to Lake Michigan tomorrow to fish for sharks. Maybe a marlin if they're in season. I hit the brakes so hard our optimism lurches into the glove box. Freshwater Daisy. She counters, they just call it lake to avoid posting shark warnings and scaring tourists. Classic government cover-up. Alfie mutters, Britain tried a cover-up once. It rained. Daisy doubles down. Anything that big is connected to the ocean. I open a map. She opens her heart to conspiracy. Maps are printed by Big Geography, she declares. We compromise a charter boat that specializes in catching perch. Daisy names the smallest one Megalodon Jr. and swears to mount it above her TV. Alfie, to be helpful, asks the captain about tides. We don't do those here, the captain says. Alfie nods as if America just said it doesn't do Tuesdays. That night, Daisy Googles freshwater sharks true, and the algorithm proposes crystals. We're losing her to the internet at one bar of service. Back on the highway, we hit a rest stop where Daisy studies a wall map like it's a mood board. Okay, Atlantic. Okay, Pacific. Where's the American Ocean? You know ours. I start to explain international waters. She waves me off. Sounds socialist. Alfie's eyebrows pack their things and move to Scotland. We make it to a motel where the lobby TV loops a documentary on the Civil War. My buddy Kevin, meeting us there, frowns at Antietam footage. Sad that America had to get involved, he sighs. I wait for the punchline. None arrives. We're the ones involved, I say. Kevin blinks. But why didn't we let the North and South sort it out, Alfie whispers. Is this performance art? Kevin also reveals he memorized the Bill of Rights, then lists 4 amendments and bows. Those are the only ones that matter. The rest are filler. He says, like the Constitution is a playlist. Daisy applauds. I decide we're doing a civics tour starting with coffee and lowering expectations. Morning seminar at a diner. Kevin proposes a legal hack. The declaration says pursuit of happiness. Speeding tickets ruin happiness. Ergo illegal. I say philosophical principle. He says loophole. Alfie says T. Daisy plans our next leg, swing by New Orleans Eiffel Tower, selfie, croissants, fluent French. I explain Louisiana French is not Paris cosplay, and the only tower we'll see is a cell tower with bad timing. She calls me close-minded. We pass a billboard. Learn your time zones, which I assume is a joke until Kevin schedules a tri-office meeting, 9 a.m. Eastern with Honolulu. Hawaii replies that's 3 a.m. Kevin fires back, impossible. America only has 4 time zones. Alfie taps a globe on his phone like a defibrillator. Kevin isn't revived. We stop in Missouri where Daisy asks if tornadoes are hurricanes that forgot to hydrate. I almost explained thermodynamics in a Casey's parking lot, but opt for a breakfast pizza and prayer. Education, it turns out, is a slow cooker, not a microwave. At a library in St. Louis, Daisy requests a map of the United States, please full size. She unfolds it, studies silently, and beckons me. If DC is Washington, why isn't it in Washington? The librarian's soul briefly departs. I draw arrows Washington, the state left. Washington, D.C., right. Daisy considers, then delivers a verdict they should swap to avoid confusion. We proceed to the history section. Kevin grabs a children's book on Paul Revere and emerges an hour later with a thesis Riviera rode from Boston to D.C. to warn President George Washington. Alfie Heroic corrects the century, person, city, and concept of presidents existing mid-ride. Kevin counters, agree to disagree. Outside, Daisy previews her Vegas trip, nervous about the language barrier. Nevada is basically next to Mexico. I say Spanish exists without annexing Las Vegas. She brightens. Good. I've been practicing Doe's margaritas on Duolingo. That'll work. I concede in exactly one situation. Daisy fist pumps like she just passed the bar of a resort pool. We detour to Yellowstone. Daisy asks a ranger, where are the valves for the geysers? We've got dinner at 7, don't want to miss the main show. The ranger, a stoic in fleece, explains geothermal cycles. Daisy is gutted. So Old Faithful isn't scheduled, roughly, the ranger says, like your uncle texting on my way. Meanwhile, Kevin evangelizes libertarianism to a bison cutout, road should be private. Neighbors could crowdfund cul-de-sacs. Alfie asks, how would ambulances find you? Kevin beams. We'll have an app. We pass a family explaining Mount Rushmore. That's President Abraham Lincoln, first president, arrived on the Mayflower. The others were his vice presidents. Daisy nods reverently. I ask a park volunteer for a defibrillator labeled fax. She hands me a brochure and a peppermint. That night, we watch stars. Kevin points at the flag on his phone lock screen. Each star is a country we've helped. Alfie whispers to the Milky Way, forgive them. They know not the kindergarten poster. Southbound to Texas. Kevin insists Texas is the only state that was ever its own country. I mention the Republic of Hawaii and the Bear Flag Republic. He says Hawaii doesn't count it's tropical and California was hippies with a flag. Alfie asks if Scottish independence would count if Scotland wore a cardigan. Kevin says cardigans are socialist. Daisy's Phoenix friend calls planning to drive to Hawaii for the weekend. Maps show it right there off Mexico. I pull over to scream into a reusable bag. Inset boxes are not teleporters, I tell the steering wheel. At a gas station, Kevin reads his paycheck and yells, who is Fika and why is he stealing my money? I explain Social Security and Medicare. I didn't consent, he says, drafting an email to arrest Mr. Fika. Alfie buys a moon pie and says, in Britain, we pay a license fee to avoid ads. Daisy gasps, you pay to not see commercials. Civilization, Alfie shrugs. Kevin considers, then mutters, sounds like tyranny with better fonts. We cross into New Mexico. A diner TV shows a hurricane spiraling toward the Gulf. Daisy relaxes. Good thing we're inland. Hurricanes die at landfall. Science. I explain remnants mean rain floods and tornadoes bowling across the map. You're fear-mongering, she says, checking the forecast for vibes. Kevin drops a constitutional hot take. My state has no income tax, therefore I owe none to the feds. States' rights. I read him the Supremacy Clause. He calls it optional DLC. Alfie suggests we visit the Smithsonian on our DC swing. Daisy nods. John Smithsonian was so adventurous. I break the James Smithson news, she sighs. Then why isn't it the Jameson Kevin ads? Because Indiana Jones had the handle. We stop at a museum where a man explains the Wild West was renamed Montana. Alfie asks whether Middle Ages became Ohio. The man considers this deeply. It's like watching a load bar freeze at 99%. Daisy buys a horseshoe that says live laugh lasso. Accuracy not included. Vegas, baby. Daisy practices Spanish with hotel staff who answer in English so polite it deserves a parade. Language barrier solved, she says, then asks the concierge which tower is the Eiffel. The one with the Eiffel Tower, he replies professionally. Kevin gambles on legal theory. Freedom of speech means my boss couldn't fire me for insulting a client. I explain the First Amendment restricts government, not HR. He nods unconvinced and buys a novelty gavel. Alfie proposes we catch a show. Daisy chooses the Hoover Dam experience. On the tour, a man asks which side is the American side and which is Canadian. The guide, a Jedi of patience, says Nevada and Arizona. The man blinks, but it's so big. Alfie whispers, scale is not citizenship. In the gift shop, Kevin requests a dam lapel pin to show I support infrastructure, not taxes. The cashier sells him a magnet that says I got lured by hydrology. Daisy buys a plush bald eagle named Debbie. Why Debbie? She looks like a Debbie. Westward ho to California. My East Coast friend Tyler calls. Where are the seasons? I've been here a month and all I've seen is blue sky. I explain Mediterranean climate. He asks if that's like a keto diet for weather. Alfie says Britain has 4 seasons in a day. Tyler begs to visit that app. We grab tacos. Kevin refuses pico because it's metric salsa. Daisy plans a SoCal beach day and asks if lifeguards take Venmo. Cash or card, I say. But it's 2025, she protests, waving her phone at a baker the next morning while trying to Venmo a croissant. He stares at the rectangle like it's proposing marriage. Alfie buys 2 pastries and coins to demonstrate civilization. Daisy whispers, coins feel like cosplay. We pass a NASA internship billboard. A man in the line at the coffee cart grumbles, we should stop funding space till we've explored Idaho. I ask what he thinks is in Idaho. He says, could be anything, then orders a caramel macchiato with the gravity turned down. DC, at last. Daisy points at the Capitol and declares, so that's where the president lives. I steer her gaze to the White House. Right the white one, she says. Kevin asks where the District of Columbia is in Washington. I draw him another map while Alfie buys bulk patience. We meet my friend Rochelle, a public defender, who explains jury duty. Kevin objects, peers means accountants must be judged by accountants. Rochelle blinks twice, a lawyerly Morse code for help. Daisy admires the Washington Monument and asks whether Lincoln ever rang the Liberty Bell to start the Revolution. Alfie coughs so hard his accent changes zip code. In the museum, a child recites the preamble. Kevin interrupts, promote, the general welfare means food stamps were invented in 1787. A docent smiles, words evolve, governments too. Daisy posts a selfie at the Smithsonian with John himself. Instagram replies with a fact check sticker. Daisy shrugs, haters. Alfie takes a photo of James Smithson and texts me, proof of life. We zigzag toward the southeast, where Daisy asks if hurricanes should be renamed when they get moody over land like Taylor's versions. Kevin is still fighting Fika in email threads that include his congressman aboard auto reply and a man named Frank who thinks Fika is his cousin. At a roadside stand in Alabama, Daisy points to a box labeled peaches and asks if they're gluten-free. The farmer says they are peaches, dear. Alfie buys a bushel to thank America for comedy. In a small town library, a man loudly proclaims Shakespeare as America's greatest playwright. The librarian's glasses fog with emotion. He wrote in English, the man says. So do we, Alfie whispers. We'll take him back for the winter. Kevin tries to rent a Ferrari at the airport with exposure bucks. I have 100K followers. The agent offers a Kia with real dollars. Daisy asks if Georgia accepts US dollars. I say yes. She nods. Even in Alaska, we're looping again. Education is Groundhog Day in a minivan. Back across the Mississippi, Daisy declares time zones are a scam. The sun is the same the whole day if you believe. Kevin schedules another 9 a.m. call with Honolulu as a protest against temporal bureaucracy. Alfie requests asylum in Nebraska. At a Kansas gas station, a man laments NASA funding. We haven't even explored North Dakota. Daisy nods. True. Mystery state vibes. I Google Theodore Roosevelt National Park and show pictures of Badlands that look like Mars with better bison. Photoshop, the man says, and buys beef jerky labeled Patriot Pepper. We overnight in Denver. Kevin brags he can't be fired for saying facts, then loudly calls the hotel a socialist pillow co-op. The manager, a private sector capitalist, invites him to sleep elsewhere. First Amendment. Kevin cries. I give him a pocket constitution and a hug. Only one proves useful. Alfie orders tea. The server asks hot or iced, and for once, without rehearsal, all three of us answer hot. Growth. It tastes like humility steeped for 2 minutes. Utah. Daisy whispers, is conversion mandatory? I explain theocracy is not the state policy. Kindness is. She relaxes enough to ask whether Zion National Park has a lineup for influencers. It does. It's called The Trail. Kevin points at a cliff and says, looks like the Grand Canyon's unfinished cousin. Alfie, staring at a sky large enough to forgive, says America is very good at scale. We meet a ranger who confirms geysers still aren't on timers, koalas aren't bears, and Vegas uses dollars. Daisy confesses, I thought Smithsonian was founded by Mr. Smithsonian. The ranger nods. I thought Big Ben was a person. Alfie grins. He is, but he prefers Benjamin. We cross the Hoover Dam one more time so Daisy can check in on Canada's side. The guide says, still Arizona with professional mercy. That evening, Kevin reads about the 22nd Amendment and declares term limits a stupid amendment we should ignore. Alfie says, that's called crime. Kevin says that's called vibes. Daisy buys a hat. Progress is nonlinear. Pacific Northwest rain arrives like a polite apology. Daisy asks if it's British imported. Alfie bows to the drizzle. In Portland, a man at a food cart tells us the flag's 50 stars are countries we've helped. Daisy nods like a bobblehead in a pothole. I explain states. He calls me Big Stripe. At a coffee shop, Kevin complains his employer enforced a code of conduct after he called a client anti-espresso. First Amendment, he repeats. The barista slides him a decaf and a pamphlet on HR. Alfie suggests we host a trivia night, Americans versus their own map. We write questions. Is Chicago coastal? Can you drive to Hawaii, which Washington holds the White House daisy, scores 50% and treats herself to a donut the size of a hubcap? I'm improving, she says, mouth full of optimism. We rent bikes. Kevin drafts a manifesto to reorganize lanes like Amsterdam, but with more stop signs. A teenager rides by no hands sipping tea. It's called balance, Alfie says, ringing his bell like a polite period. Part 16, Tau 18. We aim home through Idaho, yes, it exists, where Kevin announces he'll run extension cords to the public park to borrow taxpayer electricity for his fridge. Daisy asks if that's sustainable. It's patriotic, he says. A ranger explains theft gently enough to qualify as therapy. We camp under a sky so crowded with stars it feels like an airport for light. Alfie traces constellations. Daisy traces state lines on her phone. If Alaska is so far, why US dollars, she asks again, softer this time. Because belonging isn't distance, I say. She files that next to lakes aren't oceans. In the morning, we pass a billboard for a Shakespeare festival. The marquee reads, Much Ado About Everything. Daisy buys tickets. Alfie beams. During the performance, Kevin whispers, needs a modern translation. Daisy shushes him. Let the words work. Somewhere a librarian gets her wings. After the show, Daisy says, okay, he's British, but he can stay over. Progress from lowercase to capital P. Final sprint across the plains. The radio warns of hurricane remnants heading inland. Daisy checks the sky, nods at the clouds like they're invited, and helps us tarp the gear. So, landfall isn't the end, she says. It's the start of a road trip, I reply. Kevin accepts that Hawaii is a flight, not a freeway, and that Fika is not a man squatting in his paycheck with a mustache. Alfie confesses he once thought Mount Rushmore was a very serious cartoon. We exchange myths like postcards and keep the ones that make us kinder. Back in Chicago, Daisy stands at the lake again. No sharks, she says. Still waves. Wind, Alfie smiles. She nods. Wind. She buys a small perch shaped magnet and sticks it to our fridge at home next to a pocket constitution and a map with DC circled in actual DC. Kevin schedules a call with Honolulu at 1 p.m. their time. Growth looks like a calendar invite that finally learned math. On our last night, we spread the map on the kitchen table. Alfie draws a tiny teacup on every place we misunderstood, and Daisy tapes a post-it that reads, "Questions welcome, certainty optional." We make a pact: fewer lectures, more listening, fewer actually, more tell me. I delete my old note, 50 states, 50 fixes, and start a new one. 50 states, 50 chances to be less wrong. We draft a tourist pledge, 3 lines long, no legal loopholes, ask before asserting. Maps are not vibes. Oceans don't belong to anyone. Daisy laughs. Add number 4 lakes aren't diet oceans. We do. Alfie clinks mugs with us hot tea, no arguments. Outside, rain rehearses for England on the sidewalk. Inside, humility finally fits. America turns out not to be a quiz you ace, but a story you retell more accurately each time. We aren't fixed, but we're funnier and kinder, which might be better. And if anyone asks whether you can drive to Hawaii, we'll smile and say, not yet, but you can absolutely get there.